Chapter 28, Part 2. William felt his heart sink in his chest. He already knew what happened next. His wish came true, William said. Santa nodded. The jeepney came crashing down to the ground, and Huxley and his brother too. That was the last time that magnificent reindeer ever flew. When the young boy cleared the snow away from his eyes, he saw Huxley standing wickedly on the ground over the deer, clutching a piece of its antler in his hateful hand. That's when I found them. What did you do? William asked. I'd no choice, William, but to banish the boys from the North Pole forever, Santa said, and all the elves burst into harmonious sobs. Of course, that was little Rotter Huxley quickly shoved a piece of antler into his brother's trembling hand in an attempt to pin the blame on him. That's when it happened. I couldn't help it. A huge, thick teardrop formed in the corner of my eye, and it rolled down my cheek. It froze and became a snowflake floating through the air. The elves all paused in unison and took a breath, because the tuneful sobbing continued. This snowflake was full of my sadness, and very instant it landed on Huxley's shoulder, he disappeared from the North Pole. He vanished, said William. Banished, replied Santa. His tears were only things strong enough to do it. Then I looked at the eyes of Huxley, his little brother, who held one piece of antler in his hand. You must keep it, I told him, and let it remind you of what's happened here tonight. When a second tear popped out of my eye, froze in the air and vanished, the boy was held in stolen reindeer and antler in his heart. William thought Santa looked so sad he might cry, enough tears to banish him. The Christmasaurus and every single one of the crowd of elves gathered around listening. What happened to them after they were banished? Said William curiously. Santa looked into William's eyes again, and William got the funny feeling that Santa was thinking carefully about what he was saying. Well, Huxley became a repulsive, evil, maliciously rotten skin bag who you met tonight. Unfortunately, seeing his magnificent reindeer up close only fueled his obsession for rare animals and trophies. He'd been trying to grab one of my flying reindeers every year since, but he never gets close to them. Well, he's got pretty close to nabbing a flying dinosaur tonight, William said. That reminds me, said Santa, and he turned and faced the Christmasaurus. My dear little dinosaur, what the jingle were you doing in the boy's house? The Christmasaurus looked ashamed. He stood and walked around at the back of William's wheelchair and pulled something large out from underneath the seat of his mouth. It was stuffy, his head peeking out of the wrapping paper. I don't believe my bogglers, you went all the way to get another look at that stuffed toy. You are a dongle-brained, wally-chopped dinosaur, aren't you? You could just have got lost forever. It's not safe for you down there, said Santa. You have to stay here. This is your home. The Christmasaurus quickly snuffled over to William and parked his scaly bottom next to his wheelchair, wagging his tail, hopefully at Santa. But no, Santa, can't the Christmasaurus stay with me? I promise I'd look after him, pleaded William. I'm no mean and awful like Hunter. I know you're not, William. You're a good, kind boy, and a kind, good heart. But there's so many nasty people, William. Nasty people like Hunter, who would love to nab themselves a Christmasaurus. Up here with us is a good place. He's safe. The only place that evil Rotter can't find him. But I know all about dinosaurs, and dinosaurs don't come from the North Pole, said William, desperate for the Christmasaurus to come home with him. He might not come from here, but he belongs here, Santa said with a soft, wise smile. William knew he was right, and he looked around at the magical creatures staring at him. Elves, fairies, snowmen, snarwhals, polar bears, even mountains themselves behind them were alive. He realised that this was the Christmasaurus' home. How could a flying dinosaur ever fit in any other place than the North Pole? It was a perfect place for him. The Christmasaurus knew it too. He wished he could see William every day, but he loved the North Pole with all his heart and could never leave. William and the Christmasaurus looked at each other in the eye. The Christmasaurus let out a long, sad huff and dipped his head to the ground. William hated goodbyes too. Santa placed a hand on the Christmasaurus' head and the other on William's shoulder and whispered, "A friend for Christmas is a friend forever." Suddenly William felt as though the ground were moving. He looked down and saw the 8 little elves had picked up his wheelchair and were hoisting him towards the sleigh. It was Snozzletrump, Specklehump, Sparklefoot, Sugar Snout, star lump, spud cheeks, snow crumb and sprout. They were singing, of course. We're sending William on his way back home again for this Christmas Day. He'd seen a lot tonight for sure, and the flying Christmas dinosaur, the evil hunters and their hounds, and somewhere this William found his way to this enchanted place, and from a look upon his face he liked it. Well, of course he did. It's like a dream world for a kid. There's no much more to show you, but your time is done. You've seen enough. Now get back home and don't delay. Quick, hoist him up upon the sleigh. The elves finished singing with a large hey-ho, lifted William's chair into Santa's sleigh. Santa hopped on his feet and did a sort of cartwheel thingy and plonked his enormous bottom next to William. He really had an oddly jolly man. Amongst the crowd of elves, William saw the shimmering blue head of the Christmasaurus. As the dinosaur took steps towards him, he could see that William was crying. His tears flowed instantly as his cheeks and tiny dusty snowflakes fell away. "Goodbye, Christmasaurus," said William suddenly, finding it difficult to speak. "I'm so glad I met you." And that the Christmasaurus bent his head down low and gave William a goodbye hug. William wished he didn't have to say goodbye, but he knew it was the right thing to do, and sometimes the right thing to do are the hardest. He wiped his tears away from his cheek, and Santa wound up the old gramophone again. Glorious music lifted the sleigh from the front floor of the elves, and the Christmasaurus took a step back. Santa took a deep breath, and it was just about to sing, and he looked at William and said with a cheeky smile, "You can join in with, the words." And with that he burst into song, and the reindeer galloped excitedly into the warm northern lights once again. William couldn't believe his eyes or his ears. He was sitting in Santa's sleigh, flying at night sky, and Santa himself sitting next to him singing. He looked over the side of the sleigh and gave one final wave at his new dinosaur friend. Just before the magical effects of the candy cane wore off, he noticed a lone reindeer below, standing gracefully on the roof on the snow. Ranch with a piece of its left antler missing. William walked as the reindeer clopped towards the grand chimney breast and puffed glittering smoke into the air. It raised a golden glowing hoof and gently tipped into the smoke. It was the slightest touch of golden glow spread its warm magic up through the clouds, transforming them into billows of smoke, into thick shafts of coloured light dancing through the sky. William watched the wonderful world below faded into nothing, and wondered if perhaps that deer too had found a true desire in the northern lights he had hoped for.